BNN Vortex Network News. I'm your host, Aurora Light, and here with me in the studio at the controls is Dr. Whodini.
And good evening, Aurora.
And Dr. Whodini is the host of the second hour. And today we have with us one of our favorite guests, somebody, if you are a regular listener of BNN, you've heard him before talk about what could be coming up here very soon in the future. He's warned us about many things in the past, and I'd say most all have come true. And now here we are at another precipice, about to venture forth into territories that some people say are obvious, and other people are probably clueless. So which one are you? Well, listen and you'll find out. With us tonight is Lindsey Williams. He's a pastor as well as a person who has a strong interest in informing the people of the United States what exactly could be happening here in the near future with economics, civil unrest, food shortages, gas shortages. I mean, what does the future hold for all of us? Well, let's tune in here. Lindsey Williams, thank you for being with us this evening.
Aurora and Dr. Whodini, it is a privilege to be with you tonight, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, we took a little ride today out to your neck of the woods, and we thought, gee, not too bad. But we also thought, well, is it far enough away from the hub? We were talking about that. First of all, do you think that America can avoid the catastrophes that many people think are laying at our feet? Is there any possibilities?
Oh, positively we can. In fact, the proof of what you just suggested is when the Sandy Hook massacre took place and all of those children were murdered by a mentally disarranged young fellow, our president made the statement. He said, I'm going to do everything in my power as president to regulate guns so this will not happen again. Now, I'm quite sure that he expected the American people to bow. They didn't. Quite to the contrary, they rebelled. And the President of the United States of America became the greatest gun salesman there's ever been in the history of the United States of America. He sold out every gun shop. He sold out all the ammunition. You can't even buy ammunition now. Most guns are not even available for 6 months to a year. The mere fact that the American people, without any guidance, without any organization behind them to get them to do it, rose up and said, you aren't going to disobey the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, Aurora and Whodini, this is the only nation on the face of the earth that has ever done this. Now, think about it for a moment. Australia, they bowed, gave in, gave up their guns. Canada, they bowed. They never rebelled. They said, yeah, you can have them. England, Russia, China, no weapons. The American people, because of the free spirit for generations that's been inbred into the American people, rose up against our own president and did the opposite of what the elite thought that the American people would do. The elite thought that the American people would do what they did in all those other countries I've just mentioned. Quite to the contrary. The American people said, no way, it's not going to happen. I really honestly believe that there is a possibility that there is only one nation on the face of this earth that could successfully stop the New World Order, and I believe it's the United States of America. Now,
well, that's fascinating. That's fascinating, but how in the world can the American people do it without lining up in front of the drones and letting them shoot us down?
Well, they'll shoot the drones down. I don't think there's any question whatsoever as to what the American people are going to do. Let me give just a little background. So I know I have a lot of new friends out there in your audience tonight. You always have new listeners. And many of them will not understand why this guy can get up there and say the things that I'm saying right now. Let me give a brief background so that people will understand where I'm coming from. Many years ago, I had been the pastor of a church in Florida for 12 years. I was actually invited to be the chaplain to the elite of the world. Now, that's correct. It was during the building of the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline, and nearly every, what I would call elite, would at one time or another come and spend a few days at Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. I had the privilege of being invited to be the chaplain to that group. And if anyone in this audience has ever had a question, please don't ever again have a doubt. There positively is a group of people on the face of the earth who control the world. I know. I lived with them for 3 years. They were not in my church. I was on their oil field.
Now, I have to ask you, I have to stop you there for a moment. Why? What part of Florida were you in when this occurred?
I had been the pastor of a church in Hollywood, Florida for 12 years.
Why do you think they chose you?
Well, I went to Alaska as a missionary, first of all, and just after I got there, they began the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline, and as a result, I was available, and so they said, we will give you the Prudhoe Bay area. You know, it was very prestigious for these people. Let me try to explain a little bit if I can. Okay. These are the New World Order. These are the people who, behind closed doors, plan everything in advance. Nothing ever happens by chance. And to keep in mind that it was very prestigious for them to put across the front of my hard hat, chaplain. And they asked me, they said, would you be there to greet dignitaries when they come to the pipeline? And I said, sure, we'd be more than happy to. And they would say, oh, this is Chaplain Williams. It was very prestigious for this type of a person to be able to say, we have a chaplain. It made them look good. But if someone had asked me prior to my experience of living with these people for 3 years, if someone had asked me, Chaplain, do you believe that there's a group of people on the face of the earth who control the world? Aurora, I would have laughed at them. I didn't believe that there was such a thing. If a person had asked me after my 3 years of living with these people and sitting in their board meetings, I was invited in an advisory capacity to help the relationship between management and labor. And if someone had said, Chaplain, do you believe there's a group of people who tell the President of the United States of America what to do, dictate to Congress what bills to pass, tell the Arabs and OPEC in any given day what they're going to give them for a barrel of oil, and control the currencies of the world, I would have said, not only do I believe it, I sat and listened to them talk about it.
Okay. Now, you sat and listened to them talk about it, and what were you thinking to yourself? What was at that moment?
I shall never forget one day, I had been there for maybe 6 or 8 months, rubbing shoulders with people like I had never rubbed shoulders with in my life. Keep in mind, I was brought up in a very God-fearing home. I was always taken to church as a boy. I came to know Christ as my Savior very early in life. My mother and dad were wonderful, godly, God-fearing Christian people. And that's all I had ever known. And I remember one day, I had been rubbing shoulders with these people all day long, and I was so exasperated I didn't know what to think. I went back to my dorm room that night. I lay down on the bed. I looked up at the ceiling. And I said, oh, God, I can't believe that there are such dastardly people alive on the face of this earth that would do what I've seen these people doing. I was very exasperated, Aurora, actually listening with them and hearing them talk about it.
Okay, so you just learned what? To put a cap on it, not to give your opinion?
Well, quite to the contrary. If these people, of course, very few of them ever attended church, if these people had gone to a church, they would have talked one way. If they were with a chaplain out there in a truck riding around at Prudhoe Bay, they'd just gotten off their private jet, and they were very free with what they said. They would allow me to give them some confrontation sometimes. I very seldom did, because I wanted to figure them out. You see, I had graduated with a bachelor's degree, had taken psychiatry, I think a course or two of it in college, and as a result, I think after 12 years of dealing with a congregation of around 400 people, I knew a little bit about how to figure people out, and I made up my mind one way or the other. I was going to figure these elite out as to what their mindset is, what their thought patterns are, and what made them tick.
Yeah, that would be a challenge. So they exposed a lot to you that wound up coming true throughout the years.
Well, yes. I made friends with some of these people. I did it intentionally. My belief structure and theirs was as far apart as East is from West. Yet, on the other hand, some of them were rather amenable to my way of thinking. And I intentionally made friends with some of them and kept in touch with them after the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline was over. They told me many things when I was there that was going to happen in coming days. And I wrote it in my book, The Energy Non-Crisis. The book went out of print back about 2 or 3 years ago. People begged for it again, so we put it on Amazon Kindle. If you would like to get either of my books, The Energy Non-Crisis or To Seduce a Nation, you can go to Amazon Kindle and you will find them there. I wrote some things in my book, Energy Non-Crisis, then. After the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline, I kept in touch with them. I would call them from time to time. They would call me. In fact, one of them came to my home one day where I was a missionary down in Kasilof, Alaska, and sat and talked with me for quite a while in my private home. They would tell me, Chaplain, 6 months from now this is going to happen, and it happened every time. They would see a year from now, 2 years from now, this is planned. And in 38 years since I was there, rubbing shoulders with these people in person, they have never one time ever told me anything that it did not happen exactly like they said it was going to take place.
Well, that's a pretty good odds. So,
well,
let our listeners know. I mean, I have been listening to you now for a long time. You've been coming on the air talking about these things to the American public now for quite some time. And, you know, for those people who are not familiar with you, Lindsey, please tell them some of the things that you were told and that are on record of your predictions.
Well, in my book, Energy Non-Crisis, there's one item that was so outstanding. I was sitting one day with one of these elites who actually came to my worship service. Of course, there were many of the pipeliners that were there. And I remember there was one of the elite that actually came to my worship service that night, and afterwards he was in no hurry to leave. He seemed to be rather fascinated with what I had to say. And he sat around and talked with me for the longest. Now, back in those days, in 74, 75, 76, the only major telephone company in the United States of America was AT&T. If you wanted a phone, you got it from AT&T.
Right.
Long distance, AT&T. There was nothing else.
My dad worked for him for 30 years.
Yeah. Just in passing, I mean, this wasn't something that he was trying to impress me with, but just in passing, in the course of the conversation, he said, Chaplain, AT&T is going to be declared a monopoly. The more I thought about that, the more I realized that one of the largest companies in the world was going to be declared a monopoly and intentionally broken up by design. And I said, you mean American Telephone and Telegraph is going to be declared a monopoly? He said, yes, Chaplain. And he said, out of it are going to come numbers of telephone companies. And I recorded it in my book, The Energy Non-Crisis. It had said that. And sure enough, about 4 to 5 years later, all of a sudden, Congress up and said, American Telephone and Telegraph is a monopoly. They've got to be divided. But why it happened is what's so significant. Because the reason they did it was AT&T had been the one company for many, many years.
Do you remember Ma Bell? Do you remember Ma Bell?
Ma Bell.
Yeah,
yes.
She was bought up by AT&T, and that was my dad worked for. But, these companies kind of merged into AT&T at some point. And that was when the trouble really started with the rate setting.
And why AT&T was broken up is what is so interesting. You say AT&T had become completely independent. They didn't need anybody else's money. They could finance themselves very easily. They had great stock, and everybody trusted in them. As a result, they didn't need to borrow money from the elite banks. They were intentionally broken up because out of them came Sprint, out of them came Horizon, out of them came all these other companies. But when they started up, they had to go and borrow money from the elite banks in order to be able to do it. But AT&T was not obligated to them because they were very well endowed. And they did it intentionally so that they could put the other little companies in debt and in turn loan them billions and billions of dollars over a period of number of years while they declared AT&T a monopoly.
That makes sense.
It's amazing how these people work. The mindset of these people was astounding to me, how they could have the audacity to do what they've done to people.
Well, the old saying, he who has the gold makes the rules, is becoming glaringly obvious.
Well, today it's the new world order. It is the elite. It was announced by Daddy Bush, who is probably the elite of the elite.
Uh-huh.
And now today we've got what we have, America in massive debt, which of course they created. We have our morals have been lowered to the point that the American people have been taught, the children have been taught in grammar school and high school, that they're evolutionized animals, so as a result they act like it. And that's exactly what the elite wanted. They wanted to bring America to a point where it is today, and they've done a marvelous job of it.
Well, I think the TV nowadays is so appalling that it's hard to describe. I mean, I can't watch 95% or 98% of the stuff that's on TV. It's just hideous. So, vampires and all that stuff is just common stuff for children nowadays to grow up watching. And you have to wonder, what's next? Is there any lower they can go?
Well, I remember one day, it was about 5, maybe 6 years ago. I was sitting in my living room, and one of the elite called me on the phone, and just kind of jokingly, as we carried on a conversation, he said, "Chaplain, would you like the world to think that you are a prophet?" And I called him by name, and I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, oil prices are going to go about 3 months from now. Oil prices are going to go from $147 a barrel, where they were at that time." He said they're going to $50 a barrel.
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
I was speechless. I was utterly speechless. I didn't know what to say. Nobody could imagine that. It would devastate OPEC, the oil-producing countries. And I said to him, well, that can't happen. I said, it would be devastating. He said, sure. But he said, we have to put the oil-producing countries in the world in their place. He said they get a little too big for their britches. He said, we have to show them who boss is. We set the price for a barrel of crude oil on any given day. And so he said, are you going to be on any speaking engagements in the next while? I said, yes, radio shows too. He said, tell everybody that. Well, I dared. They'd always been right before. They'd never misled me. So I dared to risk my reputation. And I went on every show. I was on Alex Jones. I was on George and Norrie, Coast to Coast. I was on all these shows. And I said, within the next 3 months, crude oil is going to go from $147 a barrel to $50 a barrel. There were actually talk show hosts that laughed at me. In fact, Alex Jones did. He laughed at me one day, and he said, Chaplain, this can't be. And I said, but it's going to. And sure enough, 3 months later, exactly as my elite friend had told me, it happened. Instead of going to $40 a barrel, it actually went to $32 a barrel, just for a very short period of time. Then went back up to $40. And my phone rang off the hook. Talk shows all over the country were calling me and saying, you're a prophet. I said, no, I just am telling what they told me. And I don't know, I guess people just have a difficulty believing that there's such a group of people on the face of the earth. Now, we are facing some things today that they're going to do in the very near future. Everybody needs to know what their plan is, what their course of action is, because if you know, you can save yourself great heartache and can save your family many difficulties.
All right, folks, get out your pen and paper. It's time for Lindsey's class tonight to officially begin on what's happening here in the near future.
Well, again, if anyone has any question whatsoever, what I'm going to give tonight on your program, Aurora, I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to give it in such a manner that I can both say I was told this and also tell you where to go to look for what they've told me. I don't think they've ever given me this opportunity before. But recently I was on the phone with one of my elite friends. I actually have two of them that are in their 70s and 80s now that I usually keep in touch with. And in the course of the conversation, one of them told me some things that to me was, I call it a revelation. It wasn't something that really upset me, and don't you be upset by what you hear tonight either. I don't want you to lose any sleep over this. If you worry over this, you're taking it in the wrong attitude. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen according to what they told me. And this gentleman told me these things. And when he got through, I wasn't quite satisfied to begin to talk about it until I went to my second elite friend, and I did. The following day, I went to the email, and I emailed him, and I said, here's what I have heard. Is it true? And he emailed me back and said one simple sentence: everything you have heard is exactly what's going to happen. And I was amazed because the elite are working on some things right now that will, if you know what to do, you have nothing to be concerned about. If you don't know what to do and you don't take action, you're going to lose everything. Keep in mind something. In the time of the Great Depression, in 1929 through 1933, there were many people who made great fortunes.
That's right.
Not everyone stood in a soup line. And the people who made fortunes were those who knew in advance that it was going to happen. And they put their finances into such order that they didn't lose it in Wall Street. And after it was all over with, prices were so low on everything from farms to houses to you name it, until they could buy for a penny on the dollar. And that's exactly what you can do today. If you will listen to what my elite friend has told me, then you can spare yourself major heartache. So, as Aurora has just suggested a moment ago, I beg of you, please, to go and get your pen and a piece of paper. I'd like you to write these things down, post them beside your calendar. And 6 months to a year from now, when you have seen these things have their fulfillment, I know what you're going to say. You're going to look back on this program on the 15th of May, and you're going to say Aurora Light and Bill and Dr. Whodini had a prophet on their program. And if you say that, you'll be wrong. I didn't get this from any dreams. I didn't get it from a fortune teller. Didn't get it from tea leaves. Didn't get it from these interpretations of different kinds that people might have. I got it directly from the people who behind closed doors have planned every bit of it, and they know exactly what they're doing. And barring divine intervention, these things will take place. Now, let me if I can, again, reiterate what I said in the very beginning of the program, I think that America is the only country on the face of this earth that can successfully rebel against the Antichrist and not suffer many of the things that they have planned. I don't think anybody else in the world can do this except America. Now, these elite, they think they're God, but they aren't. They're mere men, but they have massive power. And there are only a few of them, and there are millions of us. And because of programs like you're listening to right here tonight, people are waking up so fast until the elite are worried. Now, with that in mind...
All right, with that in mind, I'm going to ask you to hold that thought because we have to go to our break. And tonight, as our guest is Lindsey Williams, who has been sounding the alarm here for quite some time about the direction the United States has been taking. And it's a direction, folks, that isn't good. All right, I wish I could say it was a great direction, but it's not. It's been stripping the people of their money, of their resources, and it's been an atrocity for the last 30, 40 years, if not before. The John Birch Society talked about it back in the 50s. And my parents were not John Birchers, but somehow I guess they came around door to door back then and gave out their information. And so I was reading it as a little kid. And, you know, when I read it, I thought, gee, this doesn't sound good at all. And it sounded very accurate. So we have with us tonight Lindsey Williams, who's going to be talking from an insider's viewpoint here about what's coming up. So, Lindsey, without any further ado, the floor is yours, please.
I feel honored that by the providence of God, I was allowed to know these people many years ago. I did not look for what I saw. I went to the pipeline mainly to help the pipeliners, and it wound up that I was with the elite and had a great opportunity to meet some of them. And now today, if it had not been for that experience, I would not be on your program because I would not know these things. So, here's the way it happened just a matter of days ago. I was on the phone with my elite friend. This has never happened this way before. So this, as I said earlier, this is probably the most unusual set of items that I have to give that I've ever had in the 38 years that I've been knowing these people. Normally, they will say, as the man did that day when he called me on the phone, and he said, Chaplain, would you like the world to think you're a prophet? And he told me something. But I had nothing to prove it except for the fact that he had said it. And I risked my reputation and told it, and it happened exactly like he said. Well, this time he said it, but not only did he say it, he told me where to go and find it. And this is the first time that I actually can give you documentation as to what they're going to do. And I'll tell you where to find it. So, if you've had time to get the pencils and paper, if not, I'll give you just a moment or two longer while I explain why this is so vitally important to you. When I lived with the elite, I tried my best to figure them out every way possible to see what made them think the way they do, why they act the way they do, what kind of people they were. And one of the things that I learned early on about the elite is that they do have a code of ethics. This sounds strange because it's not my code of ethics. And I doubt that it's the code of ethics of Aurora and Whodini, but they have a code of ethics. And one of the facets of that code of ethics is they must tell the world everything they're going to do before they do it. I hope you're catching this. This is so important. Now, they may tell you through a Hollywood movie. It's amazing how many buzzwords, and that's what they call them. They call them buzzwords. There'll be expressions that if you can interpret them, you will know exactly what they're going to do. And after it's all over with, the elite will say, well, we told you, why didn't you listen? Well, the average person didn't have the opportunity to live with them like I did for those years and figure them out. So sometimes you catch their buzzwords and sometimes you don't. And so what I'm going to give you tonight is my elite friend said to me, Chaplain, I want you to go to this place. In fact, he gave me two places. I'm going to give you both of them. He said, go to this place and you will know exactly what's going to happen. And then, of course, I had the prerogative, after going where he told me to go, of going back and asking questions, which the average person wouldn't because you wouldn't know how to get in touch with them. So I did. I went there, and here we go. You have your pencils and paper now. You've been forewarned. Write it down so you can do it yourself after the program tonight. The first one is on April the 2nd of 2013. The place is the New York Times. You could not find a more liberal newspaper in the United States of America. But they published in the New York Times, if you knew where to look for it, exactly what they're going to do. In fact, they gave a definition in the New York Times on that date that is so, what should I say? It is so masterful. And when I get to it, you'll understand it. But I need to give the first part first. Now, what I want you to do is when you go on the Internet to look this up, go to David Stockman Warns. That's what you want to put in. And look for the article, David Stockman Warns, in the New York Times. And I think you'll find it on April 2nd.
Spell his last name for us.
Stockman.
And then the last one? Last one?
Yeah, David Stockman, M-A-N,
okay.
Stockman.
Oh, you said Warns. Okay. I thought it was...
Yeah, Warns.
All right,
David
gotcha.
Stockman Warns.
Okay, gotcha.
And many of you will remember who David Stockman was. He was the budget director during the time of President Ronald Reagan when he was President of the United States of America.
Okay.
David Stockman is very highly respected in financial circles in the world today, and probably one of the most knowledgeable men there is. And in this article in the New York Times on that date, David Stockman tells everything. Now, I'm going to point out only a few expressions that I have picked out as buzzwords. And so I'll read them to you. Then when you go to the article, you'll be reading the identical same thing, except you may have to go through the entire article in order to pick out some of these. Okay, I'm going to quote from the New York Times on that date. Stockman wrote that the Fed's quantitative easing policies following the credit crisis have flooded stock markets with cash even while Main Street economy remains weak. The combination, he wrote, is unsustainable. Now, I hope you'll think through that real good, and when you go back and read it for yourself. First of all, he said that there are certain things that have taken place, and he said that what the Fed has done and what the elite have done and what the New World Order have done, he said it is unsustainable. That means it cannot continue. It's going to stop. And at some point, and that stopping point is what is going to be devastating to the average person, because when it happens, it's going to affect your dinner table and your family and your ability to even be able to eat the food that you need. Now, he goes on from this point to tell how it's going to go about, take place. So I'll read the next phrase, which are buzzwords. Quote, when it burst, there will be no new round of bailouts like the ones the banks got in 2008. Oh, my goodness. What a statement directly from the elite. They are telling you something, folks. Please, you must listen to this. Now, notice the first phrase of 3 words. He didn't say, if it burst. He didn't say, maybe it's going to burst. He didn't say, possibly it will burst. He said, when it burst. This is positive. It's direct. It is going to happen. Now, he says, when it burst, when we finally get to the point that we have so much national debt, we are head over heels with individuals, counties, cities, the country being in massive debt, bankruptcy, all the rest. And he said, when it burst, there will be no new round of bailouts like the ones the banks got in 2008. Now, think back for a moment. 2008, the last few months of the administration of George Bush, and you remember what happened. The powers that be, the elite, came to Congress and they said, you've got to do something. They said the whole world banking system is going to collapse, and it would have. And they said, you must give trillions of dollars, not only to the American banks, to banks all over the world, or the whole banking system is going to collapse. And it would have. And so they came up with quantitative easing 1. You remember it very well. It would, right, that they weren't ready for the collapse to take place yet. It wasn't time. And I'm going to go a step further because I've talked with these people privately on the phone, and I want to go a step further and say it's not going to happen in the next month. It's not going to happen in the next 2 months. It's not going to happen in the next 3 months. It more than likely, if they can follow their plans according to what they have, it'll more than likely happen within a year to a year and a half. And David Stockman is writing here on behalf of the elite, and he says when it burst, they're not going to bail the banks out anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to let them fail. Your bank's going to fail. Whatever you have in that bank, you're going to lose
I
it.
have to stop you that right there. The Bank of Arizona, isn't it called?
Yeah, we got some news today. Some breaking news. Holy smokes, the FDIC seizes failed bank in Arizona on Wednesday. Folks, that happened today.
And it's called?
The Central Arizona Bank in Scottsdale.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what David Stockman is talking about. The banks today are becoming insolvent, but they're not letting them close their doors. Some other bank will take them over. What David Stockman is saying is when the elite get ready for the burst to take place, they are not going to leave the banks open. They're going to let them close. They're going to let them default. They're going to close their doors. Now, that bank that you mentioned right here, the people will still get their money because somebody else will take them over, more than likely the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. But David Stockman says there's coming a time when there will be no more QE1, QE2, QE3. Quantitative easing is going to stop.
Okay, Lindsey?
Yes.
Yeah, Lindsey? Yeah, it says here in the article that, let's see, the Central Arizona Bank, it's going to be bought up or purchased by Western State Bank. So it's going to purchase all the failed assets.
So it will continue to operate. It will have its doors open probably tomorrow under the auspices of being taken over by someone else. The time is coming when that won't happen anymore. David Stockman says there will be no more round of bailouts. There is a point at which they're going to allow it to fail. Now, David Stockman said something that I have never seen in print before in my life. I have been asked over the years, probably, I would imagine hundreds of times over these 38 years, I've been asked the question, Chaplain Williams, what is the next major financial crisis in the world going to be like? Is it going to be like the Great Depression of 1929 through 1933? And I've had to tell people, I don't know. I didn't. Up until April the 2nd in the New York Times, I did not know what the next great financial crisis was going to be like. I know now, and I'm going to read it to you. They, for the first time, they, the elite, for the first time ever, have given you a definition of the next major financial crisis. Are you ready? And this has never happened before. You're hearing something tonight that never, since 1929 through 1933, they have never, ever. But remember what one of the facets of their code of ethics is? They must tell the world what they're going to do before they do it. My elite friend said, Chaplain, you go to this place and you'll find out exactly what's going to happen. And I'm going to read you right now exactly what the next major financial crisis is going to be like. They've given you a definition, and every word means something. You will find it in the New York Times on that date under David Stockman Warns, and if ever you read anything and digested it word by word, you've got to read this one for the sake of your own survival. I'm going to read it to you. Here goes, quote, "Instead, America will descend into an era of zero-sum austerity and virulent political conflict, extinguishing even today's feeble remnants of economic growth." There's your definition right there.
Wow.
They're telling you something. They are saying, you better listen, and they actually wrote
Read
it.
that one more time. That was powerful.
Yes, this is the definition that I have wanted for years, and they never gave it. They have put it in masterful words. They must have thought this through for the longest before they wrote it down in the New York Times. And everyone who will be willing to listen will be like the ones who made great fortunes back in the days of the Great Depression. And you won't stand in a soup line if you'll listen to this and take heed. I'll read it, quote, "Instead, America will descend into an era of zero-sum austerity and virulent political conflict, extinguishing even today's feeble remnants of economic growth."
Wow.
Yeah, Lindsey, yeah, I see that paragraph right here. What does that mean, zero-sum austerity?
That means that we are going to see the economy literally go to zero.
Whoa.
It means that they are going to allow political conflict, virulent political conflict. Washington is going to be in shambles. The politicians are going to be at their wits' end. You see, the elite laugh at the politicians. The politicians in Washington, the congressmen, the House of Representatives, the Senate, these people are nothing but pawns in the hands of the elite. They've bought every one of them and paid for them a long time ago. It's very obvious that they don't speak for themselves. They speak for what the elite want. And I have actually heard the elite laughing at these people because they consider them to be pawns, and they use them like this. Washington will be in a political conflict. The politicians will not know which way to turn. The people will be so angry with them, and it will be extinguishing even today's feeble remnants of economic growth. In other words, you've heard lately, we're finally coming out of this recession. No, we aren't. Quite to the contrary.
I mean, Obama's been talking about that for months now.
It's not so.
Right.
Because he said we are going to descend, and he said we will lose even today's feeble remnants of economic growth. Now, I was on a radio talk show here a while back, and a person called in. It was a call-in show. And a person called in and said, "Chaplain, you lived with the elite." I said, "Yes, 3 years." "And you've kept in touch with them?" "Yes." And he said, I guess he had followed my programs and works. And he said, "Chaplain, you mentioned that most all of the elite that you knew were American citizens, and live in America." I said, "Yes, that is correct." I said, "A few of them are foreign, but nearly every one of them were Americans." And he said, "I got a question for you then." He said, "Why would the elite destroy their own country?" Now, you notice again what David Stockman said. He said, we're going to zero.
Right.
He said there's going to be horrible political conflict. He said it will distinguish even today's feeble remnants of economic growth. I mean, this far exceeds the Great Depression of 1929 through 1933, because our world is a whole different world today. And this person said, why would the elite destroy their own country? And my response was, folks, you don't understand. The elite aren't destroying their own country. I said, you have to understand the mindset of the elite in order to understand what they're doing. I said, they are not destroying America. They are taking over America. Don't you understand that the elite must get you to the place that your children are crying and begging for food? They want to get you to the place that your dollar has lost so much of its purchasing power that, you know, there was a time when you could take a silver dollar and it would buy $1 worth of groceries, and you could use it. Today you pay $30-something for that identical same silver dollar. Our currency has lost its purchasing power, and you haven't seen anything yet. They want it to get to the point that the purchasing power is so bad you can't put gasoline in your gas tank to get to work. Your children are crying for food, and they'll come in and say, we have the answer. The New World Order. We'll bring you out of this mess. Your politicians have failed you. Your Constitution doesn't work anymore. If you just accept our new one world currency and you will give up your Constitution and allow us to direct your path, we've got sense enough to do it. We'll bring you out of this mess. That's exactly what they want. But they must take every state, every city, every county, every person. They want you in such massive debt like you cannot even comprehend. They want cities bankrupt all over America. They want this country on the verge of bankruptcy. And they are not going to allow the collapse of the currencies of the world until they've gotten everything exactly where they want it. So they aren't destroying their country. They're only taking it over. And when they take it over, with your permission, begging them to do something for you, then they will, under the auspices of the New World Order, bring the world and our society back out of the mess that it's in, but under their direction. This is exactly what they want.
So we are at a place right now where they're printing up money like crazy. Aren't they buying up mortgages still, as you've spoken about in the past?
$40 billion every month they're buying mortgage-backed securities. They own the majority of the houses that are mortgaged in America. The Federal Reserve
going on.
Is the elite.
That's going on.
Okay, so Lindsey, when do you think we're going to make this descent here?
Well, he's talking about, I think, a year and a half or
into
something.
Into an era of zero-sum austerity.
You think we have that long?
I have not given a date, and please don't anyone in the listening audience say I've given a date, but reading between the lines, in talking with these people, the reason I'm trying to help you know a time frame is because, please, people, please understand, I'm here to try to help you today and tell you what they have told me. If you will take advantage of what you have before you right now, you can spare yourself great heartache. Why? The American dollar is still fairly strong. It's not going to stay that way much longer. But it's still strong enough right now that you can go and make preparations for the inevitable. And if you will do what some people did prior to the Depression of 1929 through 1933, you can come out of this okay. But if you don't, if you stay in paper, you've lost it. Basically, if I could put it in a nutshell, if it's written on a piece of paper, it's worth the paper it's written on. Your bank account's going to be worthless. Your 401k, your IRA, you're going to lose it. More than likely, you'll lose your pension plan and your retirement fund. You already noticed that they're underfunded. I heard just the other day, in fact, I think it was on the front page of the Arizona Republic just the other day. They said that the fire, police, and so on, pension plans are underfunded at something like, I think they said, $35 or $40 billion.
Wow.
They can't continue this way. They are right on the front page of the Arizona Republic.
Well, you know, the firemen in Sedona, for example, they only have like under 6 fires a year or something like that they have to respond to. They're making $100,000 a year. These firemen.
It can't continue.
It's just crazy. How can a little town, afford those kind of payments for the firemen?
Well, they can't. That is the object of it all. The elite want every pension plan. They want the federal government. They want every city, every state, every county, every individual under massive debt that cannot possibly be paid off. Then at that point, they'll step in and say, we have an answer. The New World Order. We'll bring you out of this mess. This is the intent of what they're going to do. Now, the reason I say that it's so wonderful right now, you have, those who will take advantage of it, you have a glorious window of opportunity right now to take what you have and what you have coming in and what you can use and do it correctly. And in turn, put yourself in such a position that when this happens, your family is not going to suffer like 99% of all the other people in the world are. you still have a fairly strong dollar today. You must immediately get out of paper and get into tangibles. I remember one day, okay, I know we're coming up on a break here on the hour. Let me, one time, just before we get there, when I heard what my elite friend told me just a matter of days ago, I was so moved. You don't serve as a pastor for 12 years and a missionary for a number of years without having a heart for people. And that's been my life, all my days. I felt so much for people that I immediately went in studio and produced a new DVD series that's an hour and 30 minutes long. It's brand new. It just came out a week ago. It's entitled New Signs the Elite Have Given Me. And I'm only giving a fraction of it on this program tonight. You're going to get what they told me to do. You're going to know how to do it. You're going to know the warning signs before it happens. You're going to know every bit of this in the DVD. I would beg of you to get my new DVD series, which you'll watch on your television there in your home or on your computer. Please call, if you will, our toll-free number. Our toll-free number is 1-888-799-6111, or you can go on the web after the program tonight. Don't change that dial because you've just heard a little bit so far. After the program tonight, go on the web to prophecyclub.com, prophecyclub.com, or call during regular hours on tomorrow, 1-888-799-6111. And by the way, you'll hear an American operator. We don't use people that you can't understand. We're going to use American operators when you dial and get one of our operators on our toll-free line, 888-799-6111, prophecyclub.com. The New Signs the Elite have just given me, an hour and 30 minutes. I was on the phone one day with one of my elite friends, and he said to me, Chaplain, how much money do you have in your bank account? And I wasn't going to answer that question over the telephone, not even to him. And he noticed that I was him-hawing around. And so after a while he said, okay, let me rephrase that. He said, can you afford to lose what you have in your bank account? And I said, no way. I said, I can't possibly afford to lose it. He said, well, Chaplain, if you can't afford to lose it, then don't have it in paper. Now, I don't think I could say to you any more important statement tonight as to what you should do. If you can't afford to lose it, and it's in paper, if you can't afford to lose that paper, then don't have it there. The elite don't have anything in...
Go ahead.
Yeah, they don't have anything in paper that they can't afford to lose.
Well, Lindsey, that's interesting because, one of the things that has affected one of our contributors here to VNN is the fact that silver has been kept artificially low. And I was wondering if you have a comment on that after we come back.
I positively do.
All right, we're going to come back after the top of the hour, and we're going to talk about commodities and what's going on in that arena as well. So stay tuned, and when we get back, we'll be talking more about what's coming up here for everybody. And Dr. Whodini will be hosting the second hour with Lindsey Williams.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Progressive Technology Hour. And I am your host for this hour, Dr. Whodini. And joining me in the studio this evening is Aurora Light. Welcome, Aurora.
Hello, nice to be with you, and take a back seat.
Yes. Wow, what a shocking first hour. Boy, did this shake me up, folks.
Well, Lindsey Williams is our guest, and we were getting into the fact that silver has been kept artificially low. Where to put your money nowadays? Where's the safe spot?
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, he alerted the listeners out there to Google David Stockman warning. Now, you can Google that, folks. That's David Stockman warning. The article is there, and let me tell you right now, folks, it is shocking. Because, I'll just read this paragraph that Lindsey was talking about here. And it's And it was published
April 2nd.
Well, just a second here. The article is called, it's in Sunday Review. It's in the New York Times Sunday Review. And it's titled State-Wrecked, The Corruption of Capitalism in America. So that's the article, folks. And they have a paragraph in there that is just stunning. Okay, it's totally stunning. And it reads like this: America will descend into an era of zero-sum austerity and virulent political conflict, extinguishing even today's feeble remnants of economic growth. Did you get that?
Sends chills up your spine.
Yeah. I mean, if that isn't scary, folks, I don't know what else is. I mean, they're laying this whole thing out for you. You know, everything that Lindsey is saying here is, coming true. And, I mean, they're just laying out the course, what they're planning on doing. So, without further ado here, I'd like to welcome back Lindsey Williams and let him continue. Lindsey?
Well, Dr. Whodini, what a privilege it is to be with you and Aurora Light tonight, merely because I consider it such an honor that God, by His providence, would have allowed me to know these people so that I can be here to help you. And that's the reason I'm here. I'm trying my best to let you know what's going to happen. Never before ever in all the years that I have known the elite and kept in touch with them, never ever have they given a definition like this. This is the first time probably I have ever done shows, and I've done a number of shows with different talk show hosts in relation to this, along with you folks tonight. I've never been able to say, this is where the elite told me to go in order to look. And every person out there, you can go and read the same thing they told me to go to. I'd like to give you the second point they told me to go to. They told me to go to two places. The first one I gave you in the first hour. And for those of you who might not have been with us in the first hour, please go back in the archives and listen to it. Now, they gave me a second place to go. And I'm sure by now you have those pencils and paper handy. So here goes. It's April the 5th of 2013. The place, the Export-Import Bank Conference. The speaker, Vice President Joe Biden. Now, you can actually go on YouTube and watch this. You don't need to take my word for it alone. You don't even need to take the word of the elite for it. Even though in Vice President Joe Biden's speech there were 4 buzzword expressions, and I'm going to point them out to you and try to interpret them to you. And in the course of his speech, he told exactly what he was told to tell. And he did it in such a manner as to tell you in advance exactly what the elite are going to do if they have their way. Now, keep in mind, they are not God. They just think they are. They are mere human beings, but very powerful human beings. And as a result, they may not get their way. They didn't get their way on gun control. When our president stood up after Sandy Hook and said, I'm going to do everything in my power to regulate guns in America and never let this happen again, the exact opposite reaction to what they wanted to take place took place. Americans wiped out the gun stores and the ammunition. You can't find certain items right now. You wait 6 months to a year for it. Now,
or didn't the government buy up all the ammunition? Excuse me for interrupting, but didn't the government buy up all the ammo?
They bought a lot, but
yeah.
If you would like to go to Walmart on any morning at 7 o'clock, and they get a shipment of ammunition in almost every day at Walmart, in the sports department, on the stores who have a sports department like this, and they get it in every day. And the other day, my son and I went by Walmart because my son loves to go skeet shooting with his shotgun, and we needed some shotgun shells. We're getting a little low on them. And we went by, it was the middle of the afternoon when we went there. And we said, we'd like to buy some shotgun shells. And the man behind the desk just laughed. He knows us because we've been there many times. He just laughed and shook my hand and said, Chaplain, come at 7 o'clock in the morning. I said, what do you mean? He said, they line up. Yeah. He said, they line up at Walmart at 7 o'clock in the morning waiting for anything they can get their hands on in the way of ammunition. And they're wiped out in just a few minutes' time. He said, the rest of the day we could relax here in the sports department. No, the government's not getting it all. They're getting a lot of it. But some of it's still out there.
Well, that's good to know.
People are buying it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Lindsey, did you know that there's a fellow out there? I forget the name of his company. I have it here somewhere. Gear Up. I think it's called Gear Up. And he was recently on one of the prepper shows. And what he has is that if you go out and buy a 12-gauge shotgun, he has a patented insert that goes into the barrel, and you can fire off any round, any sort of round, just one round, but nevertheless you can fire it off in a 12-gauge shotgun, a 22, 357, I think maybe even a 45.
Yeah.
Round.
Mm-hmm.
With this insert you put into the barrel.
It has calibrations for all the different bullet sizes. Much more versatile.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's about $500 for this insert.
And I think this company is called Gear Up.
Mm-hmm. And you can put it on
and he's out
any
there,
12-gauge shotgun. Now, getting back to the artificial holding down of the silver, do you have any insight to that?
Yes, I do. I should say, they didn't tell me before they did it. Sometimes they will tell me things before it's going to happen, like they did on crude oil back about 4 years ago. They didn't tell me about this. I was not aware ahead of time that the price was going to plummet the way it did. But after it did, I went to them and I said, "What's happening?" And they told me. They told me when the bottom came around, so I took advantage of it. But and it has already bottomed out, by the way. It will only go up from this point on. And gold will eventually go to $3,000 an ounce and silver to $75 an ounce because they're going to use it to back the new world currency whenever they get ready to issue it. So it is going back up. And I hope that people out in your audience did not cash in when it got to the bottom and they got scared.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you, do you think that silver is going to go up to what, did you say?
Silver will probably go up to $75 an ounce.
Okay. Some people are thinking it could even go up to $300 an ounce.
I wouldn't doubt that, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit. But I do know about where it's going, so I stay conservative. Over the years, I have always tried to do one thing, and I guess it's kept my reputation clean more than anything else. People oftentimes ask me a question, and I'll say, I can't answer you because my elite have not dealt with that subject. And whenever I stick with what I know and I've heard from them, it keeps me out of a lot of trouble. So I will say that you can depend on the fact of gold going to that, silver going to that. It may go much higher.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering.
Well, the current price of silver right now is $23.46 an ounce.
That's so artificially low.
Yeah.
Very, very low. They took it there for two reasons. Number one, and it backfired on them, by the way. They took it there, first of all, because they wanted to frighten the little guy out of gold and silver. They want everybody in massive, massive, massive debt. And so they wanted to scare everybody they could out of the market. It backfired. And the exact opposite happened. People started buying so much gold and silver until the mint couldn't even keep up with it. The coin shops were vacant. They couldn't get silver for the longest. In fact, some of them still can't get it. So it backfired on the elite, but they wanted that to happen, but it didn't. Secondly, when they got it to the bottom, they bought like wild. They themselves. And the proof that you'll find as to why they did that, please look at insider trading. If you watch anything, you need to watch the insider trading market. That's the CEOs, the heads of the corporations that own that company's own stock. And they have cashed in the past few months. There has never been in the history, as far as I can remember, as many CEOs and corporate heads that have sold their company's own stock and gotten out of paper, and have gotten into gold and silver. And this is called insider trading. And if you know how to watch it, it is a major indicator. They sold out and got into tangibles and got out of their own company's paper when they got to the bottom. And now it's on its way back up.
You know, one of the interesting things about this is that, you know, silver is being artificially held low, yet you could not, even though it says in the paper, you know, that it's $22, $23 an ounce, try finding it. Try finding someone that will sell it to you for that. Good luck, because nobody's going to take that hit. None of these coin dealers, they're not going to take the hit. So,
well, that's exactly right. It backfired on the elite, but the elite got their gold and silver bought, which, of course, they are intangibles. Now, let me go back to that date that I gave you, because I need to point out 4 expressions in Vice President Joe Biden's speech that is a must for you to understand and to be able to do the right thing in light of what's going to happen. Again, the date, April the 5th, 2013, the Export-Import Bank Conference. Vice President Joe Biden was one of the speakers. And I'll read to you. You can go and listen to his speech personally. It's on YouTube. So please go and listen to it.
Now, Lindsey, yeah, just let me stop you right there. You said export, import?
Yeah, the Export-Import Bank Conference.
Bank Conference. Okay.
Yes.
And what city was that held in?
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
I probably could look it up, but I'm
we'll
not quite sure. Yes. Now, let me read you the statement of Vice President Joe Biden. There are 4 statements here that are very important. Quote, Vice President Joe Biden called for the creation of a new world order. Now, that's nothing new. You say, Chaplain, if that's all you've got to talk about, we've heard that before. No, that's not all I have to talk about. Joe Biden, the next 3 statements he gave are classical. You must understand them. Yes, Daddy Bush announced a new world order a long time ago. Now, let's see what else he said. Vice President Joe Biden called for the creation of new financial institutions. Oh, please get those 3 words. New financial institutions. What's a bank? A bank is an institution. They don't let them fail. What did David Stockman say? We gave it in the first hour. He said there's not going to be any no bailouts like QE1, QE2, and QE3, and like took place in 2008. He said they're going to fail. They're going to close. They're going to let them close intentionally. Right now, they're closing a little bank here and a little bank yonder, but they're not really closing it. Another bank will absorb it, or the FDIC will take it over. There's coming a time when they aren't going to do that anymore. And you will be caught off guard because you've watched them gobble up these little ones and then reopen them the next day. Not going to happen that way when they get ready for the whole system to collapse. He says we want new financial institutions. We're going to let the old ones fail. That's exactly what David Stockman said. And he said, we want new financial institutions. It'll be under the auspices of the World Bank, the IMF, and the New World Order. Now, the next 2 expressions. Next, Joe Biden called for updated global rules. Please catch these 3 words and try to absorb them. Updated. In other words, the old constitutions, it's antiquated. We've got to update. We have some global rules now, never mind the United States of America. This is not our interest. And rules, this one word states what it says. What is the rule of order of the United States of America? What is the supreme law of the land in the United States of America? It states it right in the Constitution. The Constitution of the United States of America is the supreme law of this land. And the Supreme Court can only interpret it. They cannot make it new. They can't change it. They can only interpret it. Congress can only make laws in accordance with it. If they do what they're supposed to do, which they haven't been doing too much of that lately. And the president can't bypass the Constitution of the United States of America without being called on the carpet by the people, but the people haven't been calling him on the carpet lately with what he's been doing. So Biden says we've got to have a new Constitution. Are you catching this? He said we've got to have updated global rules. Do you realize that this man, this Vice President Joe Biden, had the audacity to stand at the Export-Import Bank Conference? Joe Biden had placed his hand on the Bible when he was sworn into office as Vice President and said, I will uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. And he stands at the Export-Import Bank Conference and says, we need a new global, updated global rules, basically a new Constitution. You realize that man ought to be impeached by all rights. Years ago he would have been. The American people wouldn't have put up with it. But very few people even caught it. It's the buzzwords of the elite. Vice President Joe Biden should have long since been impeached just on what he's saying. He misrepresented the truth when he put his hand on the Bible and swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. There's a third expression he uses here, and it is, again, classical. Joe Biden called for the creation of a level playing field. 4 words, a level playing field. Do you know what he's saying? They've already started it. America must come down to the level of Mexico. Third world countries must come up to the level of America. The great American dream, Joe Biden is saying, we don't have it anymore. We've got to get rid of it. Everybody in the world is going to have to be on a level playing field. Why do you think they have moved our industry to China and Japan and Mexico?
Leveling.
Yeah, see, the buzzword nowadays, Lindsey, is one word: leveling.
Leveling is like what goes on in our society every minute, every day, and every way. Okay, children are raised to think no one's better than them. You could be, basically not do anything, sit there like a blob all day, play video games and eat ding-dongs, and, children are thought to think, well, I'm just as good as you. And, that is the leveling that's been going on in our society, that trying to bring everyone, making everyone equal, much like Ayn Rand talked about in Atlas Shrugged. That's what's going on in our society.
Mm-hmm.
And it's perfectly okay to swim the river, be a wetback, and come into America illegally. Because, after all, you're leveling the playing field. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you can drive a car nowadays without a license, without any ID, and without any insurance, and chances are you'll be back out on the street again in a few days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
unless you're an American citizen.
And if you're an American citizen,
my God,
you're going up the creek.
Yes.
Without a paddle.
That's right. You have the full power of the state coming after you.
Oh, and it's massive.
And it's ruthless.
It's massive. It's probation. It's for years on end. It's, drug testing for years on end. It's everything you could think of intrusive in your life. And that's what's going on in our society now is rape them financially, rape them of their rights, and rape them of their self-respect, their jobs, their morality, everything down the toilet.
Well, that's the message. This was the word that I was given, and they said, go to this place. And I picked out the buzzwords. Of course, I have become quite aware of how to do this over a period of many years. I produced 2 books. First of all was Energy on Crisis. Then I wrote a book entitled To Seduce a Nation. It's a must. Please get it. It was out of print for a while, and then we just put it on Amazon Kindle recently. So go there, These books, we've made them very reasonable in price on Amazon Kindle, just so you could read them. Energy Non-Crisis was my first book back in 1980, still very much up to date. To Seduce a Nation, it's exactly what's happening today, and you can get them on Amazon Kindle. I would highly recommend that you read them so you understand the mindset of these people.
And we loved your set of videos that we got, from you, all the different videos of preparation and all that you've got out. So let people check out the website out there, A Prophecy. Is it prophecywhat.com?
Prophecyclub.com, Prophecy club.com if you wish. Or you can go to, this is really interesting. You're going to appreciate this, Aurora and Whodini. One day someone came to me and they said, Chaplain, did you know that you have a website? And I said, no, I don't. You'll remember why. It was about 3 years ago, nearly 4 years ago now. I was contacted by one of the elite, and oh my goodness, was he mad. And he said, Chaplain, you've got to quit this. He said, you've said too much. He said, you've gone too far. You've called too many names. He said, you are going to have to back off a little bit. And he said, you do this and this and this and this. Oh, he said, we're going to do this, 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 and this. Well, I knew John F. Kennedy tried to argue with him. You know what happened to him? And I'm just a little guy, so nowhere in the world was I going to try it. So I had to close my website. That's one of the things that I was told to do. Well, I haven't had one for about 4 years. And so someone said to me the other day, you've got a website. I said, no, I don't. And they said, yes, you do. Well, they took their iPod, and they showed it to me. Who was sitting in a restaurant. And I said, this is amazing. Well, my son, who is very apt at computers, found out how to get in touch with the person, and we found out that a man in Great Britain had set up a website entitled LindseyWilliams.net, not .com, but .net. And so my son found a way to get in touch with this man, and he said yes. He said, I've been a follower of Lindsey Williams for a long, long time, and his works and his DVDs. And he said, people just must know what he's saying. So he said, I just set it up on my own. He's a computer programmer by profession anyway. So he said, I just set it up on my own. Well, I said, okay, it's there. And I said, I'm glad you've done it. He was afraid I'd be upset with him.
Lindsey,
and I said, no, I'm glad you've done it. But
Lindsey,
I said, here's
we're
what I'll
glad
do.
he did it too. But we're at the bottom of the hour here, and we're going to have to bid adieu here. We've got to thank you so much for all the information that you depart to us each and every time you're on our show. It's a blessing to all of us to have you keep us awake and aware of the situation here at hand. It's so easy to get, caught up in the chemtrail fog and the fluoride, comatose states that most people are walking around in. So we want to thank you here for waking us up and alerting us. And I do encourage all of you out there to purchase his DVDs and his books. If you want to get an education, this man will make sure you get a good one. So thank you so much for being with us.
Aurora, thank you for the privilege. And Dr. Whodini, it's been a joy to be with you. Anytime I can be of help to you. And I have promised people, anytime that I'm given a date, that I will call, I'll email you, and I'll say I have important information. In the meantime, Lord bless, and thank you so much for letting me be with you tonight.
Well, thank you for having the strength and the courage to come out and tell it like it is, because, boy, folks, I'll tell you, there's a lot of opposing forces out there.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't have God with you inside your being, if you're not in touch with that God force, man, you would be like a mush. You would turn into mush. You would disintegrate. You have to have the strength and the hide and the consciousness and that's coming from that direct connection that you can make with the spiritual hierarchy, Lord Jesus Christ and God, and that's what we recommend to our listeners, that they get more in touch with that spirituality, and you're a great example of that. Thank you again. All right, we'll have you back soon, Lindsey, for an update.
Thank you, Lindsey.
Thank you, and good night.
Good night.
night.